All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adeline Mitchell, one of the coordinators in the Tutorial Center, and most of you already know Brooke Ramos, who is the newest full-time librarian. And we wanted to welcome you to the MLA 8th edition workshop. And we are by no means MLA experts. We just figured as a librarian and a Tutorial Center coordinator that we should do some reading up on the changes so that we could try to inform faculty and students. So Brooke's going to start off by telling a little bit about the philosophy behind all of the changes, and then we'll get into some of the specifics about the changes.
Right, so the idea behind the MLA 8th edition is that they want to make it easier to document the sources as you find the relevant information for the citation. So that means there's no more of this, oh, I need to cite a tweet and I have to wait for the MLA to come up with some instructions on how to cite something from Twitter. It's basically a system where you can kind of figure out based on a certain amount of elements, core elements that the MLA 8th edition has, how to cite a source, regardless of what type of source it is. Also really important to the MLA in creating this edition was they wanted to make it so there is more than one correct way to document a source. What this means is you can use a different source for different reasons and highlight those different reasons in your citation. Their third principle in creating this type of this new style is to make your source or your document useful to readers, making it easier for them to find whatever you are citing. Now, I mentioned that they are using core elements. There are 9 core elements to the new MLA 8th edition, basically things that nearly every source has that you can cite. So you can see up on the screen right now, these are author, title of the source, title of the container, other contributors, version, number, publisher, publication date, and location. So you'll be familiar with author, of course. Author is loosely, it just loosely refers to the person or persons responsible for the creation of the work that you are citing. It's same as it has always been. You cite the last name, first name, middle initial. This element ends with a period, which you can see up on the screen. It says author period. So it does show you on this template how or what the punctuation is for each element. Something that might be a little bit different, pseudonyms can be used as an author, usually with something like a tweet. You're seeing the Twitter handle rather than a name, a full actual name. And while all of these are highly recommended if you can actually find, the author, title of the source, etc., if you do not have an author, that can be skipped. The next element is title of the source. It's either in italics or quotation marks based on the type of source that it is. So of course, if you're citing a book, in italics, essay, in quotation marks. You end this element with a period as well. And if there is no title, like with an art piece or a sculpture sometimes, you'll just provide a generic description like girl sitting in chair. Title of the container is our third element, and this is where it starts to get a little tricky. Basically, what a container is it is something that contains your source. So think of it as something that contains the title of your source. Or as the MLA refers to it, it is a larger whole containing the source. So that is what a container is. So when you are looking at an essay in a collection of larger, a book of essays, the title of your source is that essay, and then the container is the collection that essay is in. Containers may also be nested in another container. So an example of that would be an article, which is your title of the source, and a journal, which is the title of your container, and a database, which is the title of your second container. So that's something that's a little tricky, and we have plenty of examples to show you today in our handouts and on some resources that we'll point you toward at the end. Each container uses elements 3 through 9. You can kind of see that the container is just kind of boxed off and away from elements 1 and 2. That's because they all apply to that container. And every element after element 3 ends with a comma except for our last element, which does end with the period. The MLA's idea is that all of these elements describe the container. Therefore, they end with a comma instead of a period, like numbers 1 and 2. Our fourth element is other contributors. This includes like editors, illustrators. The name or the title precedes the name. So edited by Cynthia McDonald, comma. It ends with a comma, like I said. This is not abbreviated, so you do spell out edited and illustrated. Our fifth element is version. This would be something like unabridged version, version 1.5. Again, this is spelled out and it ends with a comma. Element 6 is number. Now, this refers to any numbering system for your container. So if you're looking at an academic journal, what this could mean is that it's volume 5, number 7 of the series. So what you would do there is VOL, period, 5, NO, period, what did I say, 10, 7, something like that. So yes, again, volume and number are abbreviated as I just described. Another type of numbering system that you may not have thought of, if you do take a look at the MLA handbook, they seem to really like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they use a lot of examples of that TV series. So an example of a numbering system from them for Buffy the Vampire Slayer is season 4, episode 10. So again, number refers to numbering systems. Our element number 7 is publisher. A couple updates with publisher. We are no longer citing the city. So MLA decided that didn't really matter so much, so we're not citing the city. Another sort of change, and Addie is going to talk a little bit more about all the changes to MLA, or the most important ones, but a really big one for publisher is the abbreviation of university and press. University is U, press is P. So what that means is University of Chicago Press would be something like U of Chicago P. So just a small abbreviation there. Our 8th element is publication date. Basically, if you have everything down to the day it was published, it is in day, abbreviated month, year, order. Now, number 9 is location, and this might be a little confusing for some of your students, and that's because it does follow publisher, and I just said we are no longer citing the location of the city of publication. So what location really means is if you're citing an essay in a book of essays, you're going to cite the pages that the essay is on. If you're citing an article in a database, you are putting the URL where that article is located. I also want to highlight a couple of optional elements that you or your students may find the need to include in their citation. One of them is instead of the URL for location, they can cite a DOI, which is basically a document identifier number that is a little more static and easier to find than a URL, which can change over time. Another option is to actually cite the city of publication. The only time the MLA recommends that you do that is if there are different versions of a work from the same publisher, and it's based on, those different versions are based on the city where it's published. For example, I recently read that Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell was different from the UK to the US version. So in that case, you may want to look at putting the city there to say, well, I read the London version, or I read the New York version. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Addie. She's going to talk about some of the big changes in MLA this edition.
Okay, I'm going to have you guys turn your attention to this work here, this handout right here that has the yellow highlighting on one side. And the other side says, how does MLA 8th edition differ from 7? So we'll start on this one. How does MLA 8th edition differ? So this was really for an audience who's familiar with 7, as I imagine most of you are, to show you really what these differences look like on a works cited page or what to expect from the different versions. So instructors and librarians here will be pleased to hear that a lot of things do stay the same. Even though we have this major shift in philosophy in terms of the container theories, the essay formatting itself has remained the same. So everything is still 12-point font, double-spaced, 1-inch margins, header, heading, etc. Everything should appear the same in terms of the student's essay, with the exception of the works cited page. In terms of in-text citations, same thing. All of the in-text citations are basically the same. The ideal in-text citation would be a last name and a page number, but as you know, there are variations from there. The only difference of note that may affect your classes or your students would be that time-based media, such as a video retrieved online, now includes, they're letting you choose relevant time or run time in the parentheses. So they do it hour colon, minute colon second. So if there's a moment that you've used, or if it's the entire thing, you would do the duration of the video. Now, not a change of principle, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more about shortening titles when they go into in-text citations, they're starting to pare them down really, really narrowly. In fact, their example here is a title, Can We Say No? The Challenge of Rationing Healthcare. They recommend shortening to can. So they're going down to one word or a noun phrase. And I'm sure that's just for space-saving purposes. You would only need to add more if you needed to distinguish it from something else. So that's the only difference in terms of in-text citation that's really a major change. I do have a couple more items here. If you'll notice, I've referred to the different lines in the container, 1, 4, 6, 7, and 9. And some of these things are a reiteration of what Brooke just said, but just so that you have it with you. When it comes to author, the major change here is that it used to be 4 or more authors became first author plus et al., and they've changed it to 3. So that's one difference. But for the most part, that's about it, other than mentioning that a Twitter handle could substitute for an author's name that Brooke mentioned earlier. On the other contributors, Brooke did mention that we are not abbreviating. So they give you common descriptions of roles for the contributor name that might come up in that category, in category 4, adapted by, directed by, edited by, illustrated by, etc. So you don't have to worry about remembering abbreviations for those things. You are welcome to add a little bit more of a flexible descriptor in that category. Uploaded by would be another example. Okay, and she already mentioned in item 6 that in the number category, they do now want VOL period for volume and NO period for issue, whereas in MLA 7, it was simply the number separated by a period. So that's worth remembering, that you'll start to see that in your student citations. Number 7, in terms of publisher, as she mentioned, the city of the publication is no longer included. There are new abbreviations for some of these publishers, and if you would like to check out a copy of the MLA handbook, page 97 covers some of those. If you'd like to sort of go into more details, it's really worth listing all of them here. But just so that you have a point of a place to look those up if you're interested. And then the location. We are now adding P for a page and PP period for a range of pages for multiple pages, which again is different from 7. And the biggest difference, I would say, in location is the URL is now required for works to try to hasten the retrieval of those works if instructors are trying to click on that link, it will take them there more quickly. So as she may or may not have mentioned, we are not including HTTP or HTTPS in the URL. It will just start with www and then the rest of the website address. So that's the side. On the other side, you'll notice that we have a side-by-side comparison between what a citation looks like in 7 versus 8. So I'm not going to go over the changes on the right-hand column because those are all, again, reiterations of what we've just said. But for a book in print, you can compare the 7 to the 8 and notice that the city has been omitted. And we have not yet mentioned that the medium no longer exists. Once upon a time in 7, we used web, print, DVD to identify what type of medium, and that was too limiting because technology is growing and moving rapidly, and so we just leave those off. Next, the journal article. With 3 or more authors, you can notice the difference between the author's name. Now we have et al. Attached. And of course, we have volume, number, and the PP per page in the second, whereas we didn't have that in the first example. And then you'll see the URL appear at the bottom there. Then for an article on a website, basically the same thing. You won't see web appear. You'll notice that there's a URL. And it is now optional to include the date of access, but it's recommended, especially if there is no initial date. If for some reason it's unclear if there's no date attached to the source itself, definitely the access date should be included. They have included the word access before the date appears. And then lastly, for the online video, you'll notice that there is a little descriptor next to, in the 8th edition, next to the uploader, because in this situation, Jane McGonigal is technically the author. She's the one giving the TED Talk. And so we want to give her credit, but it was uploaded by TED the company, so it's worth mentioning that it came from that container, so to speak. And then I would say the other container would be the site itself. So that's really it in terms of how they'll appear. It's good to kind of reference this when you're looking through your students' new citations to remind yourself of what's gone away and what's been added.
Great. I also want to talk about one of the handouts that we had for you. And I'll go ahead and for those who are viewing this video later, I'll show you this site, which can be accessed through a link on our library website. But basically, this is the MLA style site. And these are some examples of the template, which has been up on screen, filled in. It shows the source on this side and just each element filled in over here. It does give you some pop-up tips on where to see pages in the MLA book for some instructions. But this is everything filled in and then how it looks as a works cited. There are a couple of examples here. This one's a video uploaded to NASA's website. And again, the works cited entry, note that there is no HTTP here. And then this is one of the examples of 2 containers. So this is a nested container that's inside container number 2 here. An article that's in a journal in our databases. That's the location. And this is the final works cited entry. And after you view this tutorial, you can actually download this practice template for yourself. Now, I mentioned that the library has several sources for you on becoming better acquainted with MLA. So I'm here at the home page. Go down to library. And over here we have a how to cite button. And this gives information on how to cite MLA right up here at the top, as well as APA and Chicago Manual style. But over here, we have a link to the OWL at Purdue. They have updated their instructions in their Writing Lab website to explain the 8th edition. They've been very helpful in the creation of this workshop. Also, a link to what I just showed you is right here, works cited, a quick guide. as well as our MLA citation style handout. That is all available for you at the library. And also, if you want to check out the new MLA 8th edition, which is not as dry reading as you would think. We search our district's website, and it didn't even come up there. Let's try this. Right here. And if you look, we have 3 copies. One of them's checked out, one's not available, and we do have 1 copy available for checkout right now. I'd highly recommend coming in to read the philosophy, at least, behind the MLA.
And in the Tutorial Center, we will have probably lots, in terms of helping students, we will have lots of these probably example containers attached to the blank template, because I think the toughest thing for students is going to understand the concept of what source is inside of what container, and is there more than 1 container. So I think having this to fill in is what's going to be most helpful to the students who come into the center wanting citation help. If they go to the library, they will find this helpful handout here that has examples, and it also has the container philosophy on the side as well. So if they go to either place, they will find support for finding help with MLA 8.
We also just want to give you a heads up. Cynthia, one of our librarians, who you all should know, has gone through the databases to see how many of our databases have updated to the MLA 8th edition. Only 1 has, and that's Films on Demand. One of our other, that we consider sort of a citation builder helper database, EasyBib, has the 8th edition style, and you can import from all of your databases into the to EasyBib in the 8th edition style. However, corrections will probably be needed. So just keep that in mind, and let your students know as well that now more than ever they really need to double check their citations before they just copy paste. Great. Are there any questions?
What questions do you have about the 8th edition?
You know, it was so well done. Covered it all.
If you have questions, feel free to stop by in the center of the library.
And you'll have these handouts available online somewhere so that faculty can access all of them.
All right, then that concludes this workshop on the MLA 8th edition. Thank you all for coming, and to those of you who are watching, thank you for watching.